What's up everyone, John from Beyond ARTV. It is time for another episode of 7 on Sunday. Today I'm going to be talking about 7 albums that critics dismissed that I actually either really liked or else some cases I actually loved these albums. And these are going to be ranked, but it's not necessarily that I love one over the other. It's just that I feel like some, even though there's a variety of different Metacritic scores that we'll talk about, I really feel like some of these just got totally panned or else were forgotten about very easily. Even though they might have gotten a mediocre or else lukewarm review, people were very quick to say, hey, let's move on to the next thing, or hey, better luck next time, try again. But these are albums that I dare say you should maybe go back and be like, well, hold on a second there, Metacritic, or hold on, critics in general, because Metacritic is just a collection of everyone else's reviews. Let's take a look and see that these albums can be appreciated. I'm not saying that these records are the best thing in the world, but actually a couple of these are some of my favorites from the artists that we're going to talk about. So, without further ado, please drop a like on the video, let me know what you think of this list and what would you add to it in the comments section, and of course sound off future episode ideas for 7 on Sunday. The first one that we get to discuss today is Move Along, the 2005 record by the All-American Rejects. These guys, I think, are looked back on poorly just because they're associated with the scene and just being so 2000s, but I would argue that there's so much great 2000s music out there. Maybe it's occasionally a little bit over-dramatic, but at the same time, I mean, if you lived in the 2000s, it was a very dramatic time. And I look to the All-American Rejects in an album like Move Along and say, you know what? This still holds up surprisingly well, honestly. I mean, I look back to this and I'm still shocked that I can sit down and listen from start to finish and not say, hey, I need to skip a good handful of these tracks. You've got great singles like It Ends Tonight and obviously the title track, Dirty Little Secret, but there's some surprising deep cuts on that record like Change Your Mind, Top of the World, Night Drive. There's so many good songs there, and critics gave it a mixed reaction, to say the least. Metacritic doesn't actually have a compilation score for this one, just a collection of scores, but if you head over to Wikipedia and take a look, you can see that all of the reviews listed there are mostly mediocre. There's a few positive ones, like a couple of publications there, but I would weigh in and say that this album is definitely very versatile. It has some new sounds from their debut, but at the same time it kind of gives you what you want, which is a lot of pop punk alternative leaning anthems, and for that reason I can't fault it, I can't go too hard on it. Number 6, Purity Ring with Another Eternity. This came out a few years back at this point, but it's an album that I absolutely loved. In fact, I originally gave it a perfect score. I would reduce that down to a 4.5 at this point, but still, hey, I'm not trying to detract and take away from it. This is a very, very well done, dreamy, atmospheric, brooding pop record with a lot of electronics, a lot of great manipulation effects, and everything like that. I don't get into a ton of electronic music, but Purity Ring have always struck the right chord for me. So critics actually seem to love their first album, Shrines, which was a great LP, don't get me wrong, but I think that they took steps to maybe a little bit more towards mainstream, but still felt very unique, and critics hopped on board with some very lukewarm reviews. It actually holds right around a 70 on Metacritic, and most of those reviews, if you know anything about Metacritic, are kind of in the middle. I mean, a lot of lukewarm reviews don't really count towards the score too much in terms of dragging it down, but still, 70 might not sound that bad, but it isn't the greatest either. I mean, you look to critical acclaim, and that's at least an 81 out of 100, and something like Purity Ring's Another Eternity, I understand why people might have some problems with it. It might have felt a bit too polished with Corin Roddick's production, but at the same time, I was very impressed with this LP. I think it's something that I personally still come back to and enjoy. I have the record on vinyl, and I love spinning it.
I'm sipping on some sunshine. I'm gonna leave it for the morning in the afterlife. And she's drunk by the daytime. I bet she feels it just the same in the evening. I'm sipping on some sunshine.
Number 5 might be one that a lot of you do not know about whatsoever. I have talked about them on SOS before, but I think it's been a while. Let's get to know the Crash Kings. Who are they, and what was their self-titled debut? Well, it was a collection of 10 fantastic, in my opinion, songs that flow oh so well together. Instead of most alternative rock bands where you have that driving guitar, they actually had a blazing piano in its place. And I loved that. They had so much gusto and oomph to the music. But critics didn't seem to get it. They were like, scratching their heads over here, just sounds like another piano band. Is this another Coldplay? And I'm over here like, how is this even comparable to Coldplay? How are we even in the same ballpark here? The vocalist for Crash Kings has a very ambitious voice, and he's also very versatile. He can let out some howls and some screams like 14 Arms or even the single Mountain Man, which actually did top the Billboard Alternative Songs chart. That's pretty impressive. That happened my senior year of high school in 2009, and that's how I found them. As soon as I heard that song, I said, I have to hear more. I picked up the album. It's only available on CD, unfortunately not vinyl, but I do own that CD copy, and I came back to it before this video, and let me just tell you, it still holds up. If you're into something that can go from soft to hard to a driving force and is led by pianos, has a lot of pumping bass, and just a lot of charisma to it, and something very unique in the world of alternative, then I have to recommend this album to you, even if critics didn't like it. Oh, the divisive third album. At number 4, we have Louder Now by Taking Back Sunday. Yes, they were on their third album at this point in their career, and a lot of times that's when bands start to sometimes alienate their fan base, and I don't really think that the fans hated this album at all, considering this was my first big TBS album that I absolutely was stoked on and loved, especially after loving the single Make Damn Sure, but people just didn't seem to get on board with it critically. It's sitting at a 64 out of 100 on Metacritic, and I think that a lot of people just saw them as moving away from their more emo-leaning stuff that they did on Tell All Your Friends or Where You Want to Be, and this time around, I really feel like they cranked up the volume and the antics big time. They made their songs a lot more interesting and compelling, and honestly, I would take this album over their first 2 any day. Come after me. Up Against is catchy as hell. Error Operator has so much dramatic tension to it. Miami just has an urgency and kind of a passive aggressiveness to it, and My Blue Heaven is simply gorgeous. You can't go wrong with Make Damn Sure either, or even Liar It Takes One to Know One, because that song is riddled with angst and anger. This album is great. I think it's an absolutely underrated gem. I paid way too much to own this on vinyl right before they repressed it, but you know what? I've got one of the original copies, and I'm happy with that.
In the sky full of stars, I think I saw you.
Sinking a little bit lower on the Metacritic scores here, we have to unfortunately take a look at one that kind of still breaks my heart, because I don't think critics really got this one, okay? Maybe I'm just giving myself too much credit here, but I really vibed with this record. Maybe it was because I was going through a transitory phase in my life in 2014, but Ghost Stories by Coldplay is a damn great breakup record. It's melancholic, it's sad, but it's also euphoric and expressive in the way that it lets out its frustrations. Chris Martin, the lead singer of Coldplay, was going through this conscious uncoupling with his now ex-wife Gwyneth Paltrow, and while I might think that that's total BS with the way that they did things there, they were separated, they were apart, and he just couldn't take the part of seeing her with someone else. And as these songs spilled out like ink, and Magic, which was more hopeful, and A Sky Full of Stars, which is the only track that I don't really feel like it fits in as much, but I'll admit, over time, it's grown on me. So many of these tracks are absolutely beautiful. Oceans, Oh, and even the opening moments, like Always in My Head. What a gorgeous record. What a heartbreaking one. Like the Trembling Midnight that is so tense-filled. It's so much tension there that you just are left biting your nails wondering exactly what's going to happen on this John Hopkins-produced track. I think that it's severely underrated. I think it's a great album, and obviously Coldplay have plenty of those in their discography. I'm sure a lot of people are writing me off for that last one. This dude's out here defending Coldplay? Really? Well, now I have to come in defense of Fall Out Boy, because Folie Deux might just be the best record that Fall Out Boy have ever released. This came out in December of 2008, right around my birthday actually, and I got this as a birthday present. I was stoked on it. I was so happy. One of my friends gave it to me, and the sound of the record, I never questioned from the start. And while this stands at a 73 out of 100 on Metacritic, I think it was both a fan and a critical divide, and the fans really lampooned the band for this one. And critics, while it might be at 73, like I said earlier, this is kind of a misleading score because sometimes those average reviews don't drag down the overall score that much. Critics weren't exactly super positive towards this one. The sounds were much more soulful when it came to Patrick Stump's singing, which I adore. I think sounds fantastic. The guitars were still flooring. The songwriting from Pete Wentz was maybe a bit out of his mind and in somebody else's mind, but I love that he was coming at things and approaching it with a different perspective. This album is so smart, it's so well played, and it is so well performed. Everybody did their job perfectly, and the guest appearances here, I don't believe it, but they all work without a hitch. Everything goes off the way it was meant to. And that's why a record like Folie Deux just doesn't come along every day. It's so special. It stands out in their discography and just in the world of music in general. In fact, in terms of Fall Out Boy albums, I would say it's the one that I play the most. Number one, the one that really made the critics think, I hate this, and I'm over here with like one other person that I know. Shout out to Mark, aka formerly Spin It Reviews, now obviously known as Mad Sounds. I feel like we're the only people that actually liked this record. I won't say that I love every aspect of it, but The Offspring, come on, Days Go By. This came out over half a decade ago in 2012, but it's an album that I can still sit down and listen to, and I think I have a lot of fun with this, from Secret Family to the closing two tracks, like the last one especially. Holy shit, it's hard not to have fun to that. I saw some of these get performed live when I went to the Weenie Roast in 2012, and The Offspring sounded good live. They weren't amazing by any means, but still, I think that this album really got underly appreciated. Is underly a word? It got some undeserving hate, that I will say for sure. The album has many great tracks on it, and it flows very well, except for like the joke song maybe, California Cruisin', Bumpin' in My Trunk, everything like that. That one kind of stands out, but even that, I'm not gonna lie, I still jam to it. OC Guns was a great re-recording of one of their earlier tracks that came in the 90s. Days Go By was a nice, blissful title track. By no means the most original rock song whatsoever, but still a catchy lead guitar. And the opening moment, The Future Is Now, really drew me into the sound of this record overall. There's not really a song that I can single out as super weak, because obviously one is meant to be silly, so obviously you could say that one stands out in the track listing, but overall, there's no songs here that I even really dislike, and that's saying something. So for this to be standing at a 51 on Metacritic, I feel like maybe some injustice was served, and I think that some people just saw those reviews, didn't listen to it whatsoever, maybe only played it once. Give it another chance. Cue it up today. See what you think. That's it for this episode of 7 on Sunday, guys. I do hope that you enjoyed seeing my opinions on these albums that critics dismissed, but I ended up really liking or else loving. Let me know what you think in the comment section down below, and like I said, if you've got any of these albums that you can list as examples, tell me in the comments. If you're able to, support the show and what I do here on Patreon. It's the top link in the description down below. You can go directly to that by tapping the annotation in the corner of the screen there. You can see the last episode of 7 on Sunday right over here, or you can see another recent video that I uploaded on Beyond ARTV right over here. If you would like to connect with me on social media, all of those links can be found in the description. Make sure you subscribe if you're new, and other than that, I'll see you very soon.